Back on HQ, and we've reached the time of the season where every win or loss matters. Taking a look at the 12-team CFP bracket based on the current standings. We got 5 SEC teams there, and oh, how the mighty have fallen. Alabama all the way down to number 8. And last week was pure chaos in the college football landscape here. We've seen a lot of things move around. So let's get on our guys. Obviously, Danny Kanell from the Cover 3 podcast and Tom Fornelli also joining us on the screen behind us. Let's start with Notre Dame. The Fighting Irish, they'll always have that loss to Northern Illinois, but the remaining schedule does look a little bit easier. What you find normally in the Power 4. However, the Irish still have some big games ahead of them. What do you think of them?
They do, but the question is, do they have enough big games? Because their schedule really has taken a hit. Who would have thought that Army and Navy might be their most impressive resume builders on that schedule and not Florida State and USC, who just suffered losses this past weekend? I know Florida State's lost a ton, so it's hard to even keep track. But USC did lose to Minnesota, their second loss of the season. So all of a sudden, Notre Dame, I think they not only need to win out, but I think they need to win out impressively. Still Georgia Tech, an ACC opponent, Virginia, who's actually been better, in Stanford this weekend. But I think they have to win out and impress. To me, and I know Tom is going to jump all over this because he's old school, he doesn't like the new playoff, and he thinks a loss like Northern Illinois should penalize you. And I agree with him on that one. And I still think it might, when all the dust settles, if they're comparing to a 2-loss team and they're a 1-loss team, and that loss is in Northern Illinois, who lost to Buffalo the following week, I think that will hurt them. The good news for Notre Dame is they have been dominating. Riley Leonard's getting better, more comfortable in that offense. So all they can do is take care of their business, win out. Remember, they don't have a conference championship to play in. And then they kind of hope that the playoff committee will take note of how impressive they've been since that loss, which fortunately for them was early in the season.
All right, well, how about those Aggies? Texas A&M made quite the statement after taking down number 9 Missouri 41-10 at College Station. One of the bigger risers in the CFP race with 5 straight wins. Only loss came to Notre Dame in the beginning of the season. Tom, what does the Aggies schedule for the rest of the season? Does it give them a shot, you think, at the CFP?
Well, I certainly think the Aggies have a path to get to the playoff, whether as an at-large or even as the SEC champion. It's an odd situation because after they lost to Notre Dame in that season opener, they just looked so lackluster. Connor Wegman was not playing well. They made the QB change going to Marcel Reed, and he was, the team obviously kind of looked a little bit better with Reed than they had with Wegman. Then they make, to me, it was a surprising decision to go back to Wegman this week against Mizzou, and he looked like a completely different person. They blew the doors off of Missouri, and they looked like the team we thought we might see at the beginning of the year. So now you look at the way that the rest of this schedule sets up. Yes, they have to play at LSU and Texas, but they get both of those games at home. And I think LSU is a winnable game for the Aggies. I think Texas is a winnable game at the end of the season. And you look at their road games, it's like they're on the road, so they're tougher than they should be, but they're not exactly 3 teams you don't think the Aggies can beat. So if they can split those LSU-Texas games, just win one of them, and they're sitting there at 10-2 at the end of the season with a loss to Notre Dame and either Texas or LSU on their resume, that's going to be a team very much in consideration for one of the at-large spots in the playoff.
They are on a bye this week. Next up, LSU. The Tigers didn't start off too hot, Danny, with that loss to USC. However, they've won 4 games in a row since then, and the remaining schedule is looking relatively lighter. Do you see a clear path for them for the CFP?
I do, and unlike a lot of these teams where it's kind of we're going schedule hunting, who has the easier schedules, LSU does not, including this weekend. But I would almost rather have it that way as a player. Like, give me opportunities to work my way back up those rankings with impressive wins. They're an underdog at home this weekend against Ole Miss, who is a top team in the country. The perception of them as this would be a huge resume builder there as a top 10 opponent. Then they still have Arkansas at home, which is winnable, but that'd be a good solid win. Tom, already we were talking about the Aggies. They have A&M. That would be a huge resume builder. They've got Alabama on the schedule and Oklahoma. So they still have a lot on the line that they could even, I think, slip up once more and at 10-2 still be in the conversation and potentially in that bubble line to potentially still make it to the college football playoff. But most impressively, and this is where I feel pretty good about him, is Garrett Nussmeier has lived up to the hype as somebody who was taking over Jaden Daniels. It might look a little bit different. He's not as mobile, but this offense is still putting up massive numbers, and the defense is starting to get a little bit better. We'll see how much better this weekend against Ole Miss. Last year's game was an absolute shootout. We'll see if they can hold them to maybe under 24 points or something like that. But I do think LSU is getting right when they need to be.
Okay, so maybe not taking the over in that game.
No.
Maybe not. All right, we talked about how good the Aggies look. Unfortunately, that has affected Mizzou's CFP chances pretty significantly. The once unbeaten Tigers hearing overrated chants from the crowd at College Station. Tom, are they overrated? Do the Tigers need to be damn near perfect now to make it to the CFP?
I would agree that they are overrated. I've been banging that drum for a while now, but my opinion doesn't really matter as far as their playoff chances, because there is a path for them to get to the college football playoff, even if I'm not overly confident in their ability to do so. I feel like Missouri is a team that has told us repeatedly who it is when it struggled to get by Boston College, when it needed overtime to beat Vanderbilt, and then last week getting absolutely crushed by the Aggies in College Station. But one of the biggest selling points to this team coming into the year was how easy, compared to SEC standards, their schedule was. And that remains the case. If you look at how the rest of the things break down, there is that game against Alabama looming, but Alabama suddenly looks a lot more beatable after what happened against Vanderbilt. And even if the Tigers lose that game, if they win every other game on that schedule, whether it's UMass, Auburn, Oklahoma, South Carolina, Mississippi State, or Arkansas, if this team is 10-2 at the end of the year and it's an SEC squad with only 2 losses, both happen to come against A&M and Alabama, there's a very good shot that they will get one of those at-large berths. But the problem is, I just don't think Missouri's good enough to do that. I think they're going to slip up against another one of those SEC opponents. So they're probably going to finish with 3 losses. And if you're Mizzou with 3 losses and not a really impressive signature win, it's hard to see you beating out some other teams with potential cases at the end of the year.
Tom, you didn't share with Katie your nickname for Mizzou.
Oh, Mizzou?
Yeah.
That's so millennial of you. I like that.
Right?
Mizzou.
Thank you. Thank you.
Tom, I love that a lot. All right, Indiana is having one of the best starts to their season, holding a 6-0 record for the first time in 57 years. Danny, they have a pretty favorable schedule, right? We can't not say that. They don't have to play Oregon, Penn State, or USC. Can the Hoosiers actually make the playoffs?
I think they can. And, you know, it's interesting. Everyone's looking for a Cinderella story like we see in the college basketball tournament. Here we have a traditionally rich, tradition-rich basketball program who actually might be the Cinderella this year in college football. They are on a path to being 9-0 before they play the Michigan Wolverines at home in a game who knows if they are undefeated by then, and if Michigan can't figure out their quarterback issues, they might be favored in that game. Then, of course, they have to go to Ohio State. If they could somehow split one of those, and Michigan would be the game I would circle, they're 11-1, and their only loss is to Ohio State, and they can at least keep that close. Not only are they in the mix for the Big Ten championship, but they will very much be in the conversation for the college football playoff. And this would be the story of the season. What Kirk Sidnetti, the coach who was at James Madison, brought a lot of players, a lot of coaches from that program, and all of a sudden they're playing with confidence, they're playing with enthusiasm, with toughness. They've got an incredible offense, which is top 5 in the country. I don't even think it's about the schedule as it's much about Indiana as a really good football team.
I feel like, Tom, you were a little bit of a hater on the Hoosiers a few weeks ago when we were talking on
we're getting them on board.
You getting on board? You getting on board. All right, well, let's talk about a team that you're definitely... Okay, maybe. All right, we'll let you answer that in a second, but we're going to talk about a team that you are probably more favorable on, the Fighting Illini. They had a bye week, but they managed to jump a couple spots amid all the chaos. Now, you are an alumni. You got Vanderbilt coming up this weekend. You feeling worried? How do you feel about the chances?
First of all, any lingering kind of animosity towards Indiana, I assure you, is strictly a part of being an Illinois alum. That's really what that's all based on. It's a very good football team. I just don't want to tell them that too often. But as far as the Illini are concerned, I do think this is another kind of potential Cinderella story from the Big Ten that has been created by the fact that both Michigan and USC have suffered their second losses of the season already, which has kind of opened the door for another one of these Big Ten teams to kind of sneak in for a possible 4th spot from the league. And if you look at the Illini, they have their 1 loss on the road to Penn State, but they also have a big win over Nebraska on the road already. And at the rest of the schedule, that Michigan game before the season looked a heck of a lot more difficult than it looks right now. I think some people would argue Illinois is a better football team than Michigan at the moment. So to get them in Champaign, I think that's a winnable game. Obviously, going on the road to Oregon is going to be very difficult for this team. But the rest of that schedule, this is a very manageable, set of games that the Illini have. And if they could somehow get through this, if they can beat Michigan and Champaign on CBS in a couple weeks, and then get through the rest of their schedule outside of Oregon and finish 10-2, it's going to be really difficult to leave out a team that's 10-2 with a win over Nebraska, a win over Michigan, and its only losses are to Penn State and Oregon on the road. So I do think there's a case, even if it's not the most likely outcome. I didn't expect Illinois to be at this point in the season anyway, sitting at 4-1. So I guess anything's possible.
Yeah, 4-1. I will say my father also is alumni of the University of Illinois, so I am with you on that one. Go Illini. Danny Kanell and Tom Fornelli from the Cover 3 podcast, thank you so much for joining us. And if you want more college football, make sure you tune in with the guys. They take you from National Signing Day all the way up to the National Championship. You can watch now by scanning the QR code on your screen and listen wherever you get your podcasts.